My name is Samira. Once I was a faithful follower, immersed in a world that revered obedience above all. As a Muslim woman in Jordan, I wore my traditions like armor, even as I felt the crushing weight of expectations suffocating my spirit. I led prayers and shared wisdom, yet a gnawing emptiness whispered that something vital was missing, a truth that had slipped through my fingers like sand. Then, one fateful night, everything shattered. I awoke not to the mundane, but to an encounter so profound that it would forever change the course of my life. In a dream deeper than reality, I found myself enveloped in a brilliance, pure, radiant light. And there, before me, stood Jesus. His eyes held an unsettling mixture of sorrow and compassion, pierced right through the veil of my existence, uncovering the brokenness I had so meticulously hidden. "Samira," he said, reverberating within my very being, "you've lived in obedience, but blind adherence is not true faith." What followed was an awakening, a journey into a world riddled with deception, where the spiritual war playing out transcended religion itself. I saw how the elite manipulators thrived in shadows, feeding off our fears, crafting conflicts that divided families, communities, and nations. In that moment, clarity struck like lightning. Everything I had once held to be sacred was now revealed as a mere tool in a hidden agenda, a weapon against our collective awakening. As visions unfolded, they ignited within me an urgent call to action. "Your voice is vital," Jesus insisted, as if I were just one of many souls waiting to rise from the fog of complacency. I realized the silence I lived in didn't just belong to me. It echoed through countless lives yearning for truth, capability, and freedom. But how do you shatter the chains of tradition? How do you rise against an insidious tide that seeks to drown you? When I awoke from that divine encounter, gasping for breath, my heart racing, yearning for the revelations I had brushed against, I knew my life would never be the same. I stood on the brink, teetering between worlds, faced with the daunting question: could I be the spark that ignited change? The path ahead promised to be riddled with danger and hostility, but the fire of truth burned brightly within me. All I needed was the courage to step forward. Before we plunge deeper into my story, let me ask, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Comment below. I want to feel the reach of our shared truths across the globe. And remember to subscribe to Truth from Beyond for the journey of awakening we're embarking together. The revelations beyond the veil await. Don't miss the next transformative chapter. I lived in a world where silence reigned supreme, a place where the weight of tradition bound every gesture and thought. As a Muslim woman in Jordan, I was taught to embrace obedience, a blindly respected virtue. My life revolved around the expectations set by my husband, Anne, official in the military, and the intricate fabric of our community's ideals. Despite the reverence bestowed upon me as a leader in our mosque, I often felt an invisible veil, a deep sense of emotional detachment, a ghost in my own life. Every prayer I recited felt hollow, each ritual merely a shadow of the spiritual fulfillment I desperately sought. Then there was that fateful night, a moment that shattered everything I believed to be true. I woke in a haze, the weight of exhaustion pressing down as if I'd been pulled from the depths of an endless abyss into an unexpected clarity. In what I thought was a mere dream, I found myself standing in a brilliant light, a presence radiating love and peace, a figure I recognized instantly: Jesus. His expression held a mixture of sorrow and compassion as he looked at me, as if he could see the shattered pieces of my soul that I had hidden away for so long. And in that moment, something shifted. "Samira," he said, his voice enveloping me like a warm embrace. "You've lived in obedience, but blind adherence is not true faith." Each word struck me like a lightning bolt, cutting through the facade I had maintained for so long. He spoke of a spiritual war, one that transcended the boundaries of our understanding, a battle not just for souls, but for the very fabric of truth. I glimpsed realms beyond our reality, where the elite orchestrated spirals of deception, manipulating the masses from shadows, feeding on fear and division. The realization was overwhelming. Everything I thought I knew was built on a hidden agenda that exploited faith as a mere tool of control. The visions that followed were like a cinematic replay of humanity's darkest moments, interwoven with glaring revelations. I saw the chaos of wars ignited by leaders driven by ambition rather than compassion. Countries torn apart by ideologies that promised freedom, yet delivered only division. Technology, a double-edged sword in the hands of the elite, it was meant to connect us, but instead, it shackled us to an illusion of community while our individual spirits languished in silence. I cried out for clarity, yearning to understand how a world could carry such beauty and such pain simultaneously. As the revelations settled deep within my heart, I felt an awakening, a stirring that begged to be acknowledged. The illusions I had accepted fell away like autumn leaves, whispering truths I had long avoided. "Your voice is vital," Jesus continued. "Do not let it be muffled by the weight of others' expectations." The urgency in his words sent waves of determination through me. I understood that my silence wasn't just personal. It resonated with countless others, trapped in their own shadows, waiting for a spark of truth that might ignite change. Then, just as quickly as it all began, I felt myself slipping away from that radiant space, the vivid imagery fading into darkness. I awoke gasping, the remnants of revelation clinging to my heart with an intensity I had never felt before. My reality felt more fractured than ever, the walls of conformity closing in as the urgency of my experience clashed with the expectations of my life. I was left with an unquenchable thirst for the truth, a new fire ignited within, a calling that threatened to overturn the life I had known. But how does one break the silence? How does one rise against the tides of repression? The questions echoed loudly as I stood on the precipice of awakening, ready to confront a world that desperately needed its own revelations. I lived a life that, on the surface, seemed fairly ordinary. I was a truck driver, traversing the long and winding roads of America. Every day felt repetitive, yet comforting as I navigated between cities, highways, and the familiar hum of my vehicle. My life revolved around simple pleasures, good coffee at roadside diners, the rhythm of the tires against pavement, and the occasional laughter shared with fellow drivers at rest stops. But beneath that calm exterior, I grappled with an ever-present sense of unease. Something deep inside me whispering that the world was veiled in something darker, that the truths I was told were but shadows of a reality I could not yet grasp. It was an ordinary night, one I would hardly remember, until I was thrust into a life-altering moment. An unexpected detour brought me face to face with an oncoming truck. The collision was immediate. Metal mangled, glass shattered, pain radiating through my body as everything around me blurred into chaos. For a fleeting moment, time stood still. As the darkness began to take me, I felt a tugging at my soul, pulling me away from the wreckage and into a realm that felt both terrifying and distant. Then, there was light, blindingly beautiful and warm. I found myself in a realm unlike any I'd ever known, suspended in an expanse of pure serenity. And there, illuminated amid the brilliance, was Jesus. His presence was overwhelming. I felt every burden I had ever carried melt away. He looked at me with eyes filled with compassion and understanding, revealing pieces of my existence that I had long buried beneath layers of routine and expectation. It was in that sacred space that he began to unveil the hidden agenda constraining our lives, revealing the spiritual war we are embroiled in, a battle fought not in the physical realm, but within our souls. He showed me visions of our world, fractured by greed and power, a society torn apart by manipulation. Leaders I once admired appeared as puppets, moving at the whims of an elite that thrived on division and deception. I was filled with a sense of urgency as I witnessed wars erupt, not solely in foreign lands, but in the hearts of those I loved. I was shown how technology, once a tool for connection, had become a weapon of control. Misinformation spread like wildfire. The fabric of truth frayed, leading many astray. My own doubts began to echo in that divine dialogue. How could I have been so blind? The revelations came like thunder, shaking the very foundation of beliefs I had held dear. As I absorbed these messages, I felt an overwhelming call to action. Jesus urged me to awaken, to shake off the slumber of complacency, and to stand up against the forces of deception. His words pierced my heart, igniting a flame I had not known was there. I saw the potential for change in every soul, the power of awakening that lay dormant within our collective spirit. The truth was not an abstract concept. It was a living, breathing reality that demanded recognition. My fear began to dissipate, replaced by a fierce determination to understand and share the truths I had witnessed, to unmask the fog that shrouded us all. Yet, as my vision began to fade, I felt myself being drawn back to my earthly existence. The light dimmed, but the urgency remained. I awoke in my truck, heart pounding, mind racing. The accident felt like a distant memory, yet the truths I had encountered weighed heavily on me. How could I reconcile my new understanding with the life I had lived? The spiritual war loomed large, echoing in the silence of my thoughts. I was alone on an empty stretch of road, but within me stirred a call to action, a realization that the awakening of countless souls hinged on the courage of individuals like me. But as the shadows of doubt crept in, my journey had only just begun, and I felt the weight of choice pressing upon me. I was living what most would. Consider a normal life. A middle-aged truck driver, I spent my days behind the wheel, traversing endless miles across the country's highways. The hum of the engine, the rhythm of the road, these were my companions as I delivered freight from coast to coast. My life was filled with the mundane moments of a working-class man. Dropped conversations at truck stops, the familiar sight of the sun rising and setting against the backdrop of city skylines, and the occasional friendly nod from strangers at refueling stations. But beneath the surface was an undercurrent of doubt, an unshakable feeling that something was fundamentally off in the world around me. It was one fateful night when everything changed. A heavy storm swept in from nowhere, striking suddenly with ferocity. Lightning split the sky, illuminating my cab, each flash more intense than the last. I felt a deep pull as I maneuvered through the rain-soaked roads, but I couldn't have anticipated the treachery ahead. The winds howled like a beast, and in an instant, my truck veered off the road, flipping in a sickening dance of metal and gravity. In that crystalline moment between consciousness and oblivion, I felt my spirit leave my body, floating above the wreckage, watching as chaos unfolded beneath me. In this ethereal space, everything shifted. I was met by a light, a brilliant radiance that pierced through the shadows surrounding me. A figure emerged, Jesus, as vivid and profound as any vision could be. I have seen your struggles, your heartache, he spoke, his voice soothing yet powerful, resonating within a truth deeper than words. As I gazed into his eyes, I felt a wave of warmth, a connection that transcended my earthly existence. It's hard to describe the weight of his presence, but in those moments, it was as if all my fears dissipated into the air. He began to unveil the layers of deception woven into the very fabric of our society, revealing how the elite wield their power, feeding off our ignorance and division. Look around you, he gestured, and suddenly I saw the world unraveling before me, a tapestry of manipulation woven through political strife and social unrest. I understood how the wars we fight are not just battles of land or ideology, but a spiritual war unfolding on a cosmic stage. Leaders who should have united us were instead fueling our divisions, fostering hatred and fear among us. I realized that the technology meant to connect us often served as a tool for surveillance and control, reducing our humanity to mere data points in a sprawling system designed to keep us compliant. The truth stood alone amidst the chaos. Our existence was dominated by a hidden agenda, a master plan that I was blind to before. As these revelations washed over me, I felt an urgency. a call to awaken, to rise above the deceptions that had ensnared so many. You are not just a witness, Jesus said, but an agent of change. You will help others see through the fog, to understand the truth hidden in plain sight. Every pulse of his words struck me like a drum, vibrating with purpose. My life, so plain and ordinary, was suddenly intertwined with something far greater than myself. I understood that these truths were not merely for me to cherish, but to carry back into the world, to share with those still caught in the cycle of fear. And just as suddenly as it began, the vision shifted. I was back in my body, gasping for breath, heart racing against the cold metal of my cab. Reality hit like a storm. I was alive, yet forever transformed. The accident had robbed me of my past fears, but gifted me with a daunting responsibility that loomed over me like a shadow. What do you do when you realize the world is on the brink of a crisis driven by deception? A spiritual war that may very well dictate the future of humanity? My heart raced with urgency. As I emerged from that flickering space between life and death, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. And with that realization, my journey toward awakening began, pulling me deeper into an abyss of questioning that promised no easy answers. I'm a truck driver, navigating the endless highways that weave through this country. My life has often felt like a series of long, monotonous stretches, broken only by the occasional burst of excitement from the open road. I've seen the best and worst of humanity out there, the kindness of strangers and the darkness of desperation. There's something about the solitude of driving that lets you confront your inner thoughts, and mine, more often than not, are a tangled mess of fears and regrets. But it was during one of those long stretches, under a blanket of stars in the midnight sky, that everything changed. A blinding light engulfed me one evening, the headlights of an oncoming vehicle suddenly swerving into my lane. I remember the impact. It was like the world shattering into fragments around me. In the chaos, I felt myself detached from my body, soaring above what remained of my broken truck. I watched as paramedics rushed in, voices muffled like distant echoes, a surreal scene unfolding below. In that void, I was gripped by an overwhelming sense of peace, as though I'd been granted permission to gaze beyond the veil that separates life and death. In that suspended moment, I found myself standing in a vast expanse of light, the shadows of my life flickering like fading memories around me. And then he appeared, Jesus, radiant and filled with love that washed over me like a warm embrace. "You've sought truth in your struggles," he said, his voice resonating deep within my soul. "But what you see is merely a reflection of a far greater conflict, an unseen spiritual war that rages on." I felt every burden I'd carried, my doubts, the weight of 1,000 questions, falling away. It was then that I realized this battle was not just mine, it was a collective struggle, ensnaring humanity in webs of deception spun by the elite who thrived in the shadows. As Jesus spoke, revelations unfolded before my eyes, intertwining snippets of history, global manipulation, and the hidden agendas pulsing beneath the surface of society. I witnessed leaders making ruthless deals while the world slumbered, blinded by technology and empty promises, unaware of the consequences waiting in the wings. Wars instigated for profits rather than honor, divides deepening like fractures in a wall that once stood firm, all while the cries of the oppressed fell on deaf ears. "You must awaken, for your time is now," he urged, urgency lacing his words. "The truth must be confronted, and the blindfolds cast aside." As his message sank deep into my being, I felt a fire kindling within me, an awakening, potent and undeniable. The urgency of the moment bore down on me, and I could practically hear the heartbeat of the world, trembling, uncertain. "This is a time of reckoning," he continued, "for those who seek the light and those who have turned away from it. The hour approaches when the curtain will lift, and the realities of the grand illusion will lay bare." Every heartbeat felt like a drumbeat calling me to action, a reminder that my life, once just a journey down endless highways, now represented a flame of hope against a backdrop of encroaching darkness. It was with this intense clarity that I returned to my body, gasping for breath as the paramedics worked to revive me. I could still feel the warmth of his presence. It clung to my spirit as I woke up to the chaos surrounding my wrecked truck. I was alive, resurrected not just into my physical body, but into a new understanding of my purpose in this world. Yet the weight of that revelation pressed heavily on me, the realization that I'd been chosen to witness this profound truth, but had been thrust back into a reality riddled with shadows. The resolve ignited within me began to blend with the bitterness of fear. I had no idea how to navigate this awakening, how to share what had been revealed. Pushing through my physical pain, I knew I had to speak out, to challenge the hidden agendas that strangle our freedom and bind us in fear. But as I lay in the hospital, reeling from the impact of what had transpired, uncertainty gripped my heart. Would they listen? Could I break through the layers of apathy that silenced the truth? Ahead lay a treacherous path, one fraught with opposition and potential alienation. But the calling burned brightly. It demanded to be honored. That light was something I could never forsake, no matter the toll. With every beat of my heart, I felt the urgency mount, and I realized my journey was only just beginning. The questions that swirled in my mind became clearer, leading me deeper down a path I could not yet discern. As I gathered strength, the shadows of my experience lingered, each whisper driving me forward as the world around me awaited awakening. I never expected that my ordinary life, a life of early morning alarms, endless duties, and the comforting chaos of raising 3 children, would be violently interrupted by a moment that felt more like a descent into darkness than an awakening. One rainy afternoon, coming home from work, a moment of carelessness surged upon me, a collision with another car. I felt every painful second stretch into eternity as consciousness slipped away. I sank into the darkness, and for what seemed like an eternity, I was lost. And yet, in that disorienting void, a brilliant light pierced through, wrapping around me like a warm embrace. As I floated there, my fears and uncertainties ebbed away, replaced by an overwhelming peace. That light transformed into a figure I soon recognized: Jesus. Standing before me with eyes that held the cosmos's weight, he exuded an authority and a love that washed over my withering spirit. "You have entered a realm where truth reigns," he said, his voice a melody that resonated in the depths of my being. "But remember, the world you return to is filled with deception." I felt his call deep within me, a directive to awaken, to see beyond what I had been conditioned to accept as reality. In those moments, swirling around us, visions unfolded. I witnessed the fabric of society fraying at the seams, a terrifying panorama of wars being fought not just on distant fields, but in the minds and souls of ordinary people. I saw leaders, those whom we trusted, whispering hidden agendas in shadows, their paths paved with the manipulation of the masses. Technology wasn't merely a tool, it was a weapon in the hands of the elite, wielded with precision to control thoughts, desires, and even faith. My heart raced as I took in these revelations, every heartbeat echoing with an urgency to share this profound awareness with the world struggling under layers of illusion. When I felt my grip on that celestial moment start to loosen, Jesus impressed upon me a truth that left me trembling. The awakening is not just yours. It is a call to an entire humanity spiraling into chaos. Speak, my child, and do not let the fear of repercussions silence you. His words seemed to carve into my soul, igniting an inferno of passion that rushed through my veins. I realized that if I returned to my life, every decision from that point forward would be saturated with this newfound understanding, a responsibility to illuminate the deceptions that clouded so many lives. But as I was gradually pulled away from that heavenly encounter, the weight of reality crashed back down. My family, my marriage, everything I had known was now precariously hanging in balance. I could already sense the shadow of hostility waiting for me, a dark cloud ready to engulf the light I had seen. The awareness that this awakening would not be welcomed filled me with trepidation. Still, the fire ignited within me would not diminish. It fueled a resolve to fight against the waves of disillusionment that sought to drown my spirit in fear. I would expose the lies buried beneath comforting facades, emphasizing the necessity for others to awaken alongside me. My return from the brink was met with chaos. Every fiber of my being knew I had touched the truth and now bore the heavy mantle of that revelation. I felt the oppressive atmosphere close in, my loved ones manipulating the threads of our tightly knit existence. I was seen not as someone with a transformative message, but as a threat to the established order. I spoke with my voice trembling, proclaiming the truths I had witnessed. Yet the deafening roar of skepticism drowned me out. My family's distance grew, the very fabric of our lives unraveling into a dark abyss. I realized then that the greatest battle I faced was not against the world outside, but against the fears my own heart carried. The fear of rejection, of being deemed insane for daring to believe in a higher calling. Yet, as the walls closed in, I clung to that light I had encountered in the beyond. No longer would I allow myself to be silenced. The truth coursed through me like a river breaking free from ancient barriers. As I ventured deeper into the storm that awaited me, armed with the unwavering presence of Jesus in my heart, I understood. The spiritual war had only just begun. Courageously, I prepared to confront the illusions, navigate the treacherous waters, and bring the lost into the light. The urgency sprouted a new mission within me, compelling me forward like a moth to the flame of revelation, ready to unveil the hidden realities and ultimately to answer the higher call that resonated with every soul yearning for awakening. I lived a simple life, a life that revolved around the routine of the factory, the comfort of family dinners, and the whispers of daily news that hummed like a low drone in the background. My days as an assembly line worker were predictable. The hours passed as I tightened bolts and fastened parts, fueled by the promise of a paycheck and the hope of a better tomorrow for my children. But one evening, driving home on a rain-soaked road, everything changed. A tragic accident thrust me from the mundane into the abyss, where time and reality shattered, and I hovered in that liminal space between life and death. In that suspended moment, as my consciousness slipped away, I found myself enveloped in a profound stillness. The darkness was thick and suffocating, but then, abruptly, it transformed. I was no longer alone. Before me stood Jesus, radiant and full of grace. His presence exuded an unworldly peace that cut through the veil of despair. It was as if all the weight of my sin and the burdens of my life had been lifted. In this divine encounter, he did not speak. Rather, he imparted truth directly into my soul. It was a torrent of understanding, truths concealed from me all my life. I witnessed an intricate web of deception, spun by the elite, wrapping tightly around the hearts of humanity, manipulating our fears and desires, while masking their true intentions. As visions washed over me, scenes of our world unfolded. I saw wars waged not in the name of justice, but for power, driven by leaders whose ambitions masked a deeper spiritual conflict. The division within societies was palpable. Brothers turned against brothers, families torn apart by ideologies peddled by the very systems we trusted. The urgency of these revelations struck me like lightning, a divine alarm ringing in my ears, imploring me to wake up to the reality I had been blind to. The realization hit me hard. This spiritual war was not just happening in some distant realm, but was woven intricately into the fabric of our existence, affecting our daily lives, our communities, and our relationships in ways we could scarcely comprehend. With each passing moment in this suspended state, the imagery intensified. I saw the rise of technology, not as a tool for enlightenment, but as a means of control. Screens that once promised connection and information instead drew us into isolation, creating a facade of choice while limiting our freedom of thought. I could feel the weight of the hidden agenda that ensnared us, designed to keep our eyes turned inward while the world spiraled into chaos. I knew then, standing before Jesus, that this was more than just an awakening. It was a call to arms, a plea for resurrection from the ashes of complacency that had become our lives. When I returned to the realm of the living, the contrast was stark. The sirens of reality grew louder, the shadows of the world more tangible. I wanted to share my experience, to impart the change that had ignited within me, yet fear clawed at my heart. How could I speak this truth to a world so steeped in deception? The thought of being shunned, labeled as a fanatic, silenced me. But with each passing day, the burden grew heavier. I recalled the compassion in Jesus' gaze, the love that defied all understanding. That moment represented hope, not just for me, but for everyone feeling the chains of this world wrapped tightly around them. I began to write, capturing the revelations I had received, longing to sprinkle seeds of truth and hope among those who would listen. As I wrestled with these newfound convictions, it became increasingly clear that my journey had only just begun. This struggle was not merely personal, it intertwined with the broader narrative surrounding us. The tension built within me, the feeling that time was slipping away, that much was at stake. People needed to awaken to this reality before it was too late. I felt a profound sense of responsibility, a burden perhaps, to sound the alarm about the deceptions that lay like thick fog in our path. I could no longer ignore the urgency of it all. I was pulled deeper into the narrative, and revelations began to materialize about the future of humanity, laying bare both peril and promise in equal measure. The shadows of doubt loomed large as I contemplated my next steps. Every instinct screamed at me to retreat to safety, yet pushed me forward into the unknown. Every experience I had, every whisper from my heart, led me further into the light of Jesus. I was called to share this truth, to awaken others to the war that raged not just within us but around us. I could feel the invisible threads tying our stories together, a tapestry woven from the struggles and hopes of countless lives. The chilling realization that we were all part of this grand narrative became my driving force, but doubts gnawed at me. What would the consequences be if I spoke out? What would the elite do to silence my voice? As I wrestled with these fears, I sensed an undeniable shift within me, a call to greater courage and faith. The journey ahead was fraught with peril, yet the truths I had encountered burned fiercely in my heart, illuminating the path forward into the darkness, urging me to take that next bold step. I remember that day as clearly as I see my hands in front of me. Now, I was just a worker in a bustling city, caught in the whirlwind of deadlines, routines, and demands that left little room for introspection. Life slipped by in a mechanical rhythm, drowning out the whispers of my heart. The alarm clock would ring, I'd get up, commute to the office, and pretend everything was fine, even as I felt a heaviness in my chest that I couldn't shake. It all came crashing down one busy evening when a sudden pain flooded through me, and everything went dark. In that silence of the unconscious, I found myself in a space beyond anything I had known. It was a near-death experience, an unraveling of reality, where I floated amid a brilliant light that illuminated the deepest parts of my soul. And then, standing before me, was Jesus. His presence radiated a love so pure that all my fears melted away, replaced by a deep conviction that ushered in an overwhelming sense of belonging. You are seen, you are loved. He communicated not in words, but in a palpable energy that trembled through the very fibers of my being. In that moment, layers of my past began to peel away, and I was given a divine revelation. The deceptions of the world were far more complex than I had ever realized. I saw the puppeteers, the elite controlling the narrative, sowing discord to perpetuate a cycle of fear and division. Images of war-torn lands flashed before me, families torn apart, communities in shambles, all manipulated by a hidden agenda that thrived on our disunity. I witnessed how leaders, cloaked in charisma and charm, concealed their true motives, diverting our attention from the rising tide of spiritual warfare that escalated each day. As he unveiled these truths, I was shaken to my core, awakening to the chilling reality that my silence contributed to the cycle of complacency. Christianity had been branded in such a way, often dismissed as myth or radicalism. Yet, the truth I encountered shook me awake. We must fight against this deception together. The journey towards spiritual awakening is not an individual path. It is a collective uprising against the shadows pulling the strings of our lives. We are called to resist the manipulations of those who think they hold power. Returning to my life after that near-death experience felt like awakening from a long, disorienting dream, yet my soul craved to act. I started to notice the world around me, how social media fractured relationships, how news narratives twisted our perspectives, and how technology could either illuminate or ensnare us. Fear crept into conversations, breeding distrust and division among friends and family who once gathered in harmony. The urgency to speak out against these growing rifts clawed at my heart. What was the ultimate end of this? Would we let them divide us, or could we forge a path of unity anchored in truth? With each passing day, I felt compelled to share my revelations. It was no longer enough for me to be a passive observer. I had to be a participant in this spiritual war. The teachings of Jesus resonated within me, filling my spirit with a fervor to awaken those around me. Echoes of his message reverberated in my mind, urging me to confront the lies spun by the elite and challenge the status quo. I gathered my courage, determined to bridge the gaps. Yet I wrestled with the fear of reproach. Each blink of the digital screen became a reminder that the light I held within me was needed more than ever, foreshadowing a struggle that had only just begun. I never thought that a simple day could lead me into the abyss of existence. I was just a truck driver, living my life on the roads, far from the chaos many faced. I had my routine, the hum of the engine, the endless stretch of asphalt ahead, a solace that kept my mind focused, a distraction from the numbness of everyday life. Driving through the night, though, something felt different. An accident changed everything. Metal bending, glass shattering, darkness swallowing me whole. In those moments as I faded, I encountered a realm beyond anything I had grasped. In the void, I saw him, Jesus. His presence was more tangible than any reality I had known. Light radiated from him, enveloping me with a warmth that thawed the icy grip of fear. It wasn't merely a vision, it felt like a deep call to the very essence of my being. He raised a hand, silencing my thoughts, and revealed truths that felt carved into my soul. The world is not as it seems, he spoke, his voice resonating with a mix of authority and compassion. I understood then that the chaos of humanity, the wars, the divided communities, the incessant strife, wasn't merely happenstance. It was a deliberate orchestration by forces beyond our understanding, a spiritual war playing out under the surface. Everything I had dismissed as conspiracy began to unfold before me in vivid clarity. The elite, those in power, were puppeteers manipulating the masses, weaving a tapestry of deception that kept us blindfolded. Corruption thrived in the systems around us, and I watched as shadows danced around world leaders, each move calculated to maintain the grip of despair and disillusionment. I felt the urgency of the struggle, the fight for souls and truth. The chaos was a distraction, a means to keep us tethered to fear, away from awakening to the divine truth. Each revelation struck me like thunder, igniting an ember of resolve within. I felt the gravity of the situation. This was more than a personal epiphany. It was a call to action. I witnessed humanity's collective paralysis, chained by the familiar mirage of safety provided by traditions entrenched in fear. I saw faces of brothers and sisters, their eyes clouded by ignorance, longing for an awakening yet so deeply afraid to turn their gaze toward the light. There was a peculiar urgency to this mission, an understanding that the time to act was now, that I was being drawn back to a world that needed this truth more than I could ever realize. And then, as I lay in that illuminated space forged from the very fabric of love, Jesus pointed toward the horizon. "You will return. Your purpose unfolds in the light of your experience," he promised, a gentle insistence that filled me with hope. I felt energy surge through me, a reminder of the power embedded within our lives, each individual uniquely destined to ignite change. It wasn't just a gentle nudge, it was a call for awakening, an urging to pierce through the murkiness that held so many hostage. I began to grasp the weight of what lay ahead, not merely for myself, but for countless others, Samira silently suffocating in their truths. As the darkness began to recede, drawing me back into my body, I clung tightly to the revelations bestowed upon me, not yet ready to let go. Echoes of the vision lingered in my mind, a landscape of despair and hope, waiting to be connected. I awoke in a hospital bed, my heart racing faster than any truck I had ever driven. The questions flooded me. How would I translate this experience? How could I convey the urgency of the messages I had received? What awaited me was not just a journey of healing, but a path to awaken others from their slumber, to light the spark of truth amidst the shadows that loomed ever larger. I knew I had to start sharing, even if it meant risking ridicule, stepping into a realm where few dared to tread. The whispers of that spiritual war echoed in my heart, and I could feel the impending storm. Rising, an invitation to stand tall in the face of fear. What was my role in this unfolding drama, and how would I summon the courage to inspire others to awaken? As my heart beats with the remnants of that transformative night, I realize everything has shifted. Have you ever felt that profound urge to awaken, to break the chains crafted by expectations and fear? Something greater than yourself is at work, inviting us all to confront the unseen spiritual war unfolding around us. The truths that were once so carefully hidden are now whispering, begging for clarity, and the awakening is a call we cannot ignore. What I experienced was not meant for me alone. It carries the weight of responsibility for us all. It is a movement, a collective uprising against the deceptions that bind us. Each one of us has the power to unleash the light we hold within. But as we navigate this path, I invite you to ponder. What fears have you allowed to silence your voice? What truths have you been yearning to uncover? Your reflections are vital, and I encourage you to share your experiences in the comments below. Together, we can ignite a fire of shared awakening. If this resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Truth from Beyond, and don't forget to activate the notification bell. Each new revelation we share could be the spark that ignites another's journey towards truth. The road ahead is filled with powerful stories that await us, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. Our upcoming video will dive deeper into another extraordinary testimony, an encounter that could reshape your understanding of faith and purpose. I'm Hamza, and I'm grateful you chose to join me in this exploration. Remember, each step we take toward truth is a step toward liberation. Until next time, stay vigilant and keep seeking the light within.